Hey, thanks for watching. I plan to use this channel to tell stories, do artwork, and improve my video making abilities. This video is intended as a concept run. I will be sure to do more in the near future. This story is told as if true. Feel free to subscribe and stay tuned. Here is how I came to know the horror of the Zipper Man. This story began back when I was in middle school with a boy I'll call Thomas. He was a pretty normal kid, but was kind of a shy loner. We had moved into town that same year and become friends. We didn't really hang out often, but I got to know him well enough. Thomas had lived up in the mountains with his mom. He was an only child and maybe it wasn't rich, but got what he wanted. I never heard much about his father in all that time and knew he left when Thomas was younger. Thomas told me he had nightmares every so often. The problem was, he would bring it up like he wanted someone to know it was happening, but not any details. I didn't think much of it, but started to think he was being abused or bullied, because towards the end of the 8th grade, his health had started deteriorating. This was the first time he started elaborating on a figure that prevented him from sleeping. It was this figure and lack of sleep that was making him sick, and he said he barely managed to keep his grades passing all year. I guess I didn't notice until his ragged appearance was obvious. As Thomas started describing some of the events, I was actually freaking out a bit. I was more concerned he was having a mental breakdown. Thomas told me the figure at times would stand wordlessly at the end of his bed, sometimes completely in the dark, or even worse, with light highlighting its face when light shone in through the window. The Zipper Man looked like he wore a burlap sack over his face, with holes torn out for eyes. It had no discernible nose and a long zipper like mouth. The entity usually just stood there staring at him, doing just enough to keep him awake. He had originally tried to get help, but felt like he was stressing out his mom, who also noticed odd things occurring and always just blamed him. In order to cope, he basically kept the lights on at night and stayed under the covers. The Zipper Man had started showing up in all his dreams, and Thomas believed he was being fed upon. At this time, Thomas thought he was going to die soon, and he described the most recent encounter. At the time, he looked so pale and scared, but almost relieved I would listen. Thomas said that night he had gone to sleep. He awoke and saw his light bulb burn out. Panicked for a moment, he went for a backup bulb in a drawer, but realized he was out. At this point, he ran for the covers, but as he was about to pull up the blanket, the Zipper Man was standing there at the foot of his bed. Thomas said he had a strange, surreal moment where he thought the figure at the end of his bed was just a doll or puppet, and he could see straw coming out of the wrists like a scarecrow or something. Somehow he realized the person must be holding the doll and knew that the person was his father. Feeling a moment of confusion and anger, Thomas went to push the Zipper Man and confront what he believed to be his father playing a sinister joke. As he approached in the darkness, he saw the eyes of the creature and its legs stretched up further until it was towering over him. Thomas said he was suddenly helpless, completely frozen in terror, but he realized the creature needed his help. It just wanted to be free, like it couldn't open its own mouth, and Thomas knew the only way to get rid of the thing was to help it. In a trance, he reached up and grabbed the piece that kept the zipper mouth closed. Thomas said he felt like if he hadn't done it, he was going to die, but he quickly realized he had been tricked. Even in that instant, the Zipper Man did an odd neck jerk and a few stitches popped loose. The smell was rancid for a moment, and the creature started opening its mouth with this screech as the rest of the zipper was torn open, and he described this dreadful sound as the creature seemed to be continuously inhaling. Thomas was screaming as loud as possible, but could feel the being eating all the energy like a gust of wind. It seemed like all the air in the room was gone, and he felt like he was floating up. As he did, 3 balls of light were dragged out of his body, and he knew they represented his soul. For a moment, they were lighting up the room, but one by one got swallowed up, as if by a snake, in the Zipper Man's extended jaw. Thomas said he fought as hard as he could, but couldn't stop this from happening. Once the last orb was swallowed, the room went pitch black, and he fell back down what felt like a couple feet back onto the bed. He felt terrible then, and he knew his body was left a hollow shell filled with shadow. Even though panic was setting in, he collapsed from exhaustion. He thought he had died in some way that night, but knew that meant the Zipper Man wouldn't bother him again. I could see he was shook up, but I pressed him pretty hard for any sort of proof at this point. I felt bad, but I realized he had kind of been expecting it, and apparently had tried to get something over the years. Thomas told me he had tried a few disposable cameras when he was younger. He tried to explain how afraid trying to take the photos had made him. The first camera was an attempt to fight back. After the first photo, he was clicking the camera while hiding under the covers, and every shot came out terribly. The few good angles with flash he'd taken showed an empty space at the end of the bed, but he promised me the first photo captured him, but barely. At this point, I was pretty interested. He went on to show me a few pictures from the second and third camera. All of the photos looked like the film had been damaged, like the film had been exposed to sunlight. The developer said the film was normal, but there must have been some issue with the camera. The third set of pictures came out completely black, sometimes with a few odd colors around the edges. Thomas told me he had been brave with the first picture, making an honest attempt to fight back and reveal its malevolent entity. At this point, he handed me the first photo. It was almost completely black, except for a few highlighted areas. I could just make out the edge of his bed, and then I could see this thing's face as clear as day, and I could just never unsee it. My mind was already racing, trying to dismiss the evidence in front of me, but I just knew it wasn't a prank. I had had enough, but Thomas chose his time to tell me. He wanted me to show you that. And I knew he meant the Zipper Man, without needing to ask. I could sense a creeping terror rising in my body, and I felt like I had been staring at the image for several minutes. If I just kept my head down, he kept talking. Thomas said, "I don't have a soul now, but I feel like this thing is going to be going after you or someone else next. And I just want you to know what happened, but I still don't think I could have stopped it." The other night, after the Zipper Man opened his mouth and ate the lights, I could hear someone screaming. Thomas burst into tears, but he continued. I could hear someone screaming, and I could hear that it was me. For a moment, while the Zipper Man's mouth began to close, something was trying to climb out. I was trying to climb out. I saw my own terrified face, like looking into a mirror and seeing myself screaming, being swallowed whole, and right as my hands tried to pry the mouth apart from inside, its mouth started zipping back shut. I could see my fingers get mangled up and still hear the muffled screaming, but for a moment, I felt like I could have grabbed my own hand and gotten him out, but I was too scared to move. A second later, my mom came into the room. She had heard the same screaming, and I didn't know if it was from me. I guess it was from me, my soul at least. All I could do was say I had a nightmare. I felt terrible for Thomas, but I undoubtedly chalked the experience up to a nightmare myself back then. I will be leaving the story here for now, but will consider revealing the shocking truth behind this abominable creature in a part 2 video. This was just a sort of test run, and I saw a lot of quick ways to improve on future videos here. Feel free to leave any suggestions, tips, or tricks in the comments. Thanks for checking this out.